we are having football this fall. At least that is up right now. The NFLPA and the NFL have made an agreement to have complete season this year. We are not having any preseason games though, and players are allowed to opt out in the season, and they will receive a compensation of $250,000, which I think is fair if you don't decide to play. Yeah. So, what are your thoughts on that?
So first of all, the preseason not being a thing this year, I think that's a great move because first of all, those games are unpaid. So like, why would if you're Carson Wentz, if you're someone like Bobby Wagner, Aaron Donald, why would you have an incentive to play in the preseason? Like, yay, I'm warming up a little bit or learning the scheme. But I was watching a podcast by Zach Schaumler, who's the host of Strong Opinion Sports, and he brought up a really good fact and point that all these players, like if you look at Lamar Jackson, he threw something like 16 passes in the preseason. If you look at someone like Tom Brady threw like 20, Drew Brees threw like 6 or something ridiculous like that. The preseason doesn't matter for these, solidified starters, and they're not being paid for it. So there's going to be less injuries. And also you're reducing the COVID risk, which is why they're doing it in the first place. Less games, less potential exposure to COVID. And just overall, I'm happy that's gone. It would have sucked for some of the, like you have 53 men on the roster, like the 54th, 55th, 56th guys. Like that sucks for those guys because it's just going to be solely based on practice now versus like real game reps. But the preseason going away, that's a great move in my opinion.
So here's what I think. So preseason going away might be great for like the average fan and the average show, but the problem is for these like no name players, no offense, or like these seventh rounders that really need to prove their spot, prove their roster spot. Uh, it really sucks for them, man. And I'm looking at
Yeah.
this on how like the different periods are. So they'll be having like 8 days of an acclimatization period where they're only having 60 minutes on field conditioning. They're only going to start playing with pads like August 17th. And that's basically the preseason time, August 17th to September 6th. That's not a lot of time by any means. And you only have 90 minutes of practice. And it's quite rough, man.
They're not going to be hitting for a while as well. Like I believe,
Yeah.
I have the guidelines pulled up right in front of me. There's a lot of things about testing. I believe players, the first 4 days of a mini camp, which is starting July 28th, those first 4 days are just COVID-19 testing to make sure all the coaches and all the players test negative rather. And if they
Yeah.
test positive, they're getting quarantined for, 2 weeks. And talking about opt-outs, we did have one opt-out so far. Kansas City guard I'm trying to read his name right now, Laurent Duvernay-Tardif. He opted out for the 2020 season, and he has a really good reason for doing so because he's a literal doctor and he's on the front lines. So, round of applause to him for, facing the pandemic daily and having the strength to give up football for this year and take care of his patients. So shout out to him. Some other like COVID guidelines I saw though are if the season is forced to shut down, players will not be paid for the games that do not occur. I think that's pretty fair, even though that's going to suck. But the bigger thing that is affected from that is the 2021 cap space. Because I think most stadiums are holding 20% of capacity or something like that if they host
Yep.
games. And the revenue decrease from that, according to Adam Schefter, he said it could decrease from 40 up to maybe $80 million. Currently, the cap is just shy of $200 million. So you could lose up to 40% of their revenue. And that could be crazy because you could have like mass cap casualties around the league. So if that does
Yeah.
happen, that could hugely impact the game plan. And if you see like someone like Jadeveon Clowney, he's not getting a long-term deal whatsoever because people don't know what's going on with the money wise. Like, let's just say you sign him for a $15 million per year deal for the next 4 years and bam, next year cap goes down 40 million. Like, how are you going to afford
You're
him?
still paying him. You're still paying him. Exactly. That's the problem. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just a quick shout out to the Chiefs for the Patrick Mahomes deal, which I don't really know your opinions on that, though. I'm assuming you're obviously glad that that deal happened. But he's for his first year, or rather, he's under contract 2 more years under his rookie contract. So 2021 for them isn't really going to matter as much because they're not paying him the hefty $45 million per year that year. They're only paying him like 10. So shout out to the Chiefs for being lucky if it all goes to hell with cap space in 2021.
Yeah, I agree. I think obviously, I mean, as every person would think, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of years, but it's also the biggest athlete on the team. Yeah, great signing, great re-signing for Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, I cannot wait for him to stay in Kansas City for the next 12 years now. And on top of that, I think it's great. It's the only thing is it's risky because any injury can change it. He almost fell to the Madden curse last year, but he bounced back and won the Super Bowl. So I think that shows you his character. Yeah, and to replace Duvernay Tardif, the Chiefs signed guard Kaliki Ozemele. That's breaking news as well.
Ooh, I'm all with
Yeah, that's
the great news that I didn't know happened.
yeah, that's a great replacement.
He's a former Pro
Ozemele,
Bowler for
yep,
the
the
Raiders
Ravens.
back in 2017, 2016. So
Ravens.
that's a solid player, even if he's not the same player that he was a few years ago. So that's a great move.
Yeah, I agree.
So
And
for me, the biggest thing that happened for COVID is that like we had the player movement that I think people are titling it the "I want to play" movement, where you had a ton of players going on Instagram and Twitter saying we want to play and we want solid guidelines to keep us safe and all of that. And the NFL responded pretty quickly. I believe the players just approved a plan like today or yesterday saying the safety guidelines and everything. So shout out to the NFL for being on top of this. And I know it's hard to be on top of it because it's a literal pandemic and it's, the rules and everything are changing daily. Who knows? Maybe the pandemic is airborne and you're going to have to completely change all your rules for that. But just overall, I really like the NFL's response to COVID and the players I want to play movement, which is what I'm going to title it. I don't know if that's the actual name for it.
yeah, I agree. That the players reacted harsh, and then NFL reacted quickly and got the job done.